When I was first going out to raise venture capital dollars, I was told like you have to listen to these investors. They've been around the block. They know what they're doing. What I've realized is that you as the CEO have more information than anybody in the orbit around you. And so your job is to take in that data, because it's not to say that they're wrong. They may just not have a complete set of understanding of the facts on the ground and the information that you have. Just because people are older than you or have a more important title than you doesn't mean that they know everything and they're always right. So trust your own gut, trust your own judgment.
Welcome to Fierce Frequency, the podcast where your voice, your power, and your story take center stage. I'm your host, Angela Cherry. In each episode, we dive into bold conversations, fresh perspectives, and the energy that fuels change. Tune in, turn up, and let's get fierce together. Welcome to Fierce Frequency. This week we have Caleb Avery as our special guest. Caleb is a highly accomplished consultant and entrepreneur in the payment space who's revolutionizing the landscape with PayFac-as-a-Service. In 2019, he founded Tilled after spending nearly a decade advising merchants and enterprise software businesses on how to optimize their payment processing solutions. Caleb's transparent approach to payments, which focuses on the belief that ISVs should enjoy the lion's share of the revenue, laid the foundation for Tilled, an embedded payment solution that doesn't require ISVs to compromise on technology, user experience, or economics. Prior to founding Tilled, Caleb also co-founded a credit card processing ISO while in college, which has expanded nationwide to offer processing services for over 15,000 merchants and software businesses. So welcome, Caleb. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. Excited to be here.
So Caleb, why don't you tell us the story about how you first got started in the payment space?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been in payments my entire career. So started initially just going door to door selling payments to small business owners. So not exactly what all of my friends were doing in college, but it seemed interesting to me. And so really just from the ground up, going out there, talking to small business owners about their payments. And in the early days, it was mostly just placing terminals on the counter. It wasn't integrated to anything. There was no embedded payments experience. It was just key in the amount, swipe the card, process your payments. And as we scaled up the business, what we started to see was more and more of those small business owners were coming to us and saying, hey, do you have anything that can help me with payroll, invoicing, scheduling, a lot of this additional functionality outside of just the core payments ecosystem? And so to me, it felt like that was the direction that the space was headed in. And so when I moved to Colorado, this was going on 10 years ago, I started doing more consulting and angel investing for vertical software platforms. And so most of those guys were just using Stripe. And so I was the guy coming in to let them know, hey, you're leaving millions of dollars in revenue on the table by partnering with folks like Stripe. But what I quickly realized was they really at the time had this choice. Do we want to partner with a technology provider like Stripe, where we get a great technology experience, but oftentimes aren't monetizing the payments necessarily at all? Or do we go partner with a legacy processor and have to go down that path where you know you're going to make money, but you're going to compromise on technology, support, the experience? And so for me, all of that experience led me to this idea of like, hey, maybe I could go build something to bridge that gap, which ultimately became Tilled and what we consider PayFac-as-a-Service.
Wow, that's incredible and so true. I remember back in the day when we were just placing terminals, but then the conversations began to grow bigger and bigger. So it's really cool how you took the information and have formed it into what is now Tilled, and you're out there providing these services that are so needed. You know, are there any verticals that Tilled works better for, or what does that look like?
The nice thing is that we have the capacity to serve a very wide variety of verticals. Today, we primarily focus on lower risk verticals. So think in the healthcare space, that could be dental practice management softwares, chiropractic softwares. We've got quite a lot in the veterinary space. We do a lot for restaurants, whether that's in person, could be food trucks, could be online ordering, could be catering solutions. We have a number of folks in the field services space. The nonprofit category is huge for us, but we also have a long tail of clients in what I consider kind of niche verticals. So we have folks that are in like the rock quarry vertical. So you weigh your truck on the way in, fill it up with rocks, weigh it on the way out, and swipe your card on the terminal. We've got dumpster rental software. So you name it, we probably have somebody in that vertical. And I think that's the cool thing about where we are in payments here today in 2025 versus if you rewind 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there was not a vertical software solution for all of these crazy niche verticals. It was really the more mainstream verticals that you were seeing that solution versus fast forward 10 years, basically any vertical that you can think about, there is a software solution for that. And I think a lot of our customers and our referral partners are waking up to that reality where we've got a lot of ISOs, agents, payment processors that are coming to us because their merchants more and more are demanding that they have something besides just that terminal to place on the counter. And so we're seeing a lot of partnerships between the vertical software companies that have the technology that the merchants want, and then the folks from the more traditional payments landscape that have distribution and they have the relationships with the merchants. And I think there's a huge opportunity there to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. So now you founded Tilt in 2019, correct?
Correct.
So in the beginning, are there any lessons that you learned along the way that you can speak to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it all comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. And that's especially true in the early days because there's so many different things that you have to figure out and so many little pivots that you have to make in order to get to that idea of product market fit. So the first iteration of Tilt that we put out there, not surprisingly, was not exactly what everybody was looking for. And so for me, the group of people that I had around me were the guys and girls in the foxhole that were helping me figure out that day-to-day piece. And so you got to make sure that you're really, careful and intentional about the people that you surround yourself with in the early days, because that can be the difference between success and failure.
I agree. I think that goes for a lot of different aspects of life too, right? Who we surround ourselves with.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were getting Tilt started, did you bootstrap it, raise funds? Like, what does that look like?
Little bit of everything. So ultimately, in the end, we have raised quite a bit of outside capital. We've raised north of 40 million at this point in the business. But for the first probably 18 months or so of Tilt, I was a solo founder. And so it was me on my own, really trying to figure out, is this actually a viable business opportunity? And so for me, part of it was just convincing myself, like, this is actually something that I want to go spend the next 10 plus years of my life doing. But the other part of it was like, are we actually capable of solving this problem for these software platforms? Because the problem itself was pretty obvious. The vertical software platforms were frustrated with the experiences that they had available to them. But what was a little bit less obvious was, what is the actual solution to the problem here? Because if you think back to 2019, when I was starting the business, a number of our now competitors were doing what was considered PayFac in a box. And the tagline was, every software platform is going to become a registered payment facilitator, which in hindsight is a pretty silly idea. And obviously that never turned out to be the case, but we were all trying to solve this same problem and we were all coming at it from different angles. And so once I got to that point of, belief in myself, hey, I can be the one to go solve this problem. And hey, I feel like I'm onto something with this concept of PayFac-as-a-Service. That was when I started to bring on employees. And that's the point that we went to go raise outside capital and then, got on the venture capital hamster wheel from there.
Caleb, what do you enjoy doing when you're not running around traveling and spreading the word about Tilt?
Yeah, so obviously I do spend a lot of my life focused on Tilt. I'm on the road all the time, but when I'm not at the office and not traveling for work, I feel like for me it's either time with the family or I'm trying to be on the golf course. Those are the two big activities that fill the other voids of time for me. And so I've got 3 little ones, 7, 5, and 2 that keep me on my toes, keep me busy and keep me humble. And then golf is also a very humbling endeavor where you can go out and shoot an incredible round one day and then show up the next day and it's like you've never played the game of golf. But for some reason, I keep coming back.
You can also multitask and do some business while you're golfing, right?
Well, that's what leads to the rounds where you feel like you don't know what you're doing. So I played a round the other day where I'm on email half the time in between holes, and before you know it, it's like, oh wow, I've shot a terrible round today. So that's a dangerous and slippery path that you can go down on the golf course.
I bet. So shifting gears back into the payments industry, where do you see the landscape evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's 2 big trends that we're seeing. I think the first is that a lot of the larger vertical software platforms are interested in moving beyond just the core payments experience. And so if you look at the largest level, the Shopifys, the Toast, the Service Titans, the MindBodies, all of those folks are offering experiences beyond just a core payments infrastructure experience, whether that's capital, whether that's an issuing solution, whether that's a banking solution. So they're figuring out ways to offer more value to their merchants, but also ways to diversify their revenue streams. And so we certainly feel like that's an opportunity for the mid-size and long tail vertical software companies. And so that's a big focus of ours over the next, call it 12 to 24 months, to bring some of those additional capabilities to market and offer the software platforms these additional revenue streams, and then the merchants additional value from the platform. And so I think you'll see more and more of that as we fast forward over the next few years. And then the second trend that we're seeing is that a lot of the larger, more traditional legacy processors, if you will, are really starting to lean into the ISV opportunity. And so I think probably 4 years ago, I gave a talk at the Southeast Acquirers show talking about the death of the ISO. And originally it was more tongue-in-cheek, kind of an ironic moniker, with the idea that at that point in time, it was really an opportunity. If you wanted to be on the cutting edge, you could start selling to ISVs or partnering with ISVs to distribute those out to merchants. And at that point in time, you were ahead of the game. Fast forward to 2025, if you're not doing something in the ISV vertical, I feel like you're behind. And so I think that's one of the big trends that we expect to see, is this acceleration of folks from the more traditional payments landscape figuring out how can we get involved in this new ISV segment. And that's obviously something that we at Tilt are excited to be a part of, helping people learn the space, give them access to technology, and then really train them how to go after these ISV opportunities so that ultimately it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. So for you, what does success mean to you today, both business and personally?
World domination. No, that's that's not true. I think for me, a lot of it is being able to provide the experience that I want for my family, and some of it, frankly, is me being more present at home, which hasn't always been the goal for me over the last few years. But I feel like I'm getting the business to a point where I'm trying to be more conscious and intentional about being present when I'm home for the kids, and then when I'm in work mode, I'm hustling and I'm in work mode. And so I think a lot of what I think success for 2026 looks like for me is being better about finding that balance between the two.
Excellent. When researching one of your standout moves, your personal LinkedIn profile drove 95% of lead flow in your first year. Is that true?
That is a fact. LinkedIn has been a pretty core part of building out Tilt. And I can honestly say in the beginning, that was not plan A. I had no idea really how to do LinkedIn. I was not a big poster, frankly, wasn't even all that active following other people and commenting. But as I started to share more of the raw, like the good, the bad, the ugly in the early days of building out the business, it just seemed like that was resonating with folks. And then as I also started to share more about just, me, the human behind the business, it just seemed to resonate with folks. And it's interesting. It's like in today's remote environment, I don't always have a great sense of like what me sharing those stories might be, doing for other people. But whenever I go to industry shows or trade shows, I have folks that come up to me and like they will literally say, "Hey, this particular post resonated with me or inspired me to go do this, or maybe purchase this backpack or this golf club or whatever it is." And so those little moments are fun for me because it just encourages me to keep going and keep posting, because it does take a lot of time. That's the reality, is if you're actually going to do this, you have to acknowledge that this is going to at times feel like a distraction from what you should be doing day to day in the business. But then when we land big deals or sign customers, or you have these interactions with folks that are just enjoying the content, it makes it all worth it in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know for me, I'll go through times where I'll do a little less, a little more, but I do know that it does drive more than you realize, when, especially when at least in my experience, I've had people reach out to me that I would want to talk to,
100%.
coming to me just based off of the content, as like you're speaking about, and sharing that, because it is inspiring to read all different facets of it. We always see the highlight reels, but there's a lot of struggle in there. There's the sleepless nights, and the things, the worry, and is this going to work out, and all of those things that I think it's important that we do share that at times, so people understand they're not alone, right?
Yeah, there is the kind of struggle behind that facade of all the success that you see. I was recently posting about just trying to get home early to put my kids to bed, and so I got on an earlier flight and ended up like basically in the back row of the plane in a middle seat. But for me, it was like, hey, I can get home an hour early, put the kids to bed, and like that to me is worth it.
Absolutely. Okay, so what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice that I have ever been given, I think for me, I had a conversation with a mentor of mine back in, this was probably 2020, just talking about the value of your network. And for me at that point in time, I was like, yeah, what does a network matter? What is that going to do for the business? And then for me, over the last, I'd say 5 years, that's really been a core focus, is how can I go build up my network within the payment space? Because once you do, you realize how small this space actually is. And I think the cool thing for me is it's, one, personally beneficial for myself and Till, but it also allows me to open up doors for other people. And so you can go make introductions for other founders, investors into opportunities that it doesn't cost me anything, and it allows me to put people together. And I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, so now what's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh.
See, this one got me.
So I think when I was first going out to raise venture capital dollars, I was told, like, you have to listen to these investors. They've been around the block. They know what they're doing. And I think in hindsight, whatever, 5 years later, what I've realized is that you as the CEO have more information than anybody in the orbit around you. And so your job is to take in that data, because it's not to say that they're wrong. They may just not have a complete set of understanding of the facts on the ground and the information that you have as the CEO. And so I think I have done a much better job in recent times of just saying, hey, thank you for all of that data, but it's my job to really interpret and make the right decision for the business. And so just because people are older than you or have a more important title than you doesn't mean that they know everything and they're always right. So trust your own gut, trust your own judgment above all else.
So true. So very true. So tell us this: if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or your team at Tild, how can they go about that?
If you just want to learn more about what we're doing, our website is a great place to start. We got tons of free content, blogs, there's videos. But as we've said, LinkedIn is a great place to track me down. So if you want to learn more about the struggles of building a business, the challenges with diapers and sleepless nights and all the fun of having kids, or why I suck at golf, follow me on LinkedIn, and then hit me up in the DMs if you want to learn more.
That's fantastic. Caleb, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today. And For our listeners, don't forget, you don't need permission to evolve, just a fierce decision to begin. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for listening to Fierce Frequency with me, Angela Cherry. If today's episode inspired you, don't forget to follow the show and share it with someone who needs that spark. Until next time, stay bold, stay powerful, and stay fierce. And remember, you don't need permission to evolve, just a fierce decision to begin.